Hey guys, RLA Jack here with a MATLAB video over program flow, the third in the series, and this video is on for loops. Now, what for loops are is this idea of iterating through multiple elements in a vector or some like series of objects as you get into like cell arrays and stuff. But what a for loop lets you do is go through all of the elements in a vector, and it will run a block of code setting a particular variable to that particular element each time. So I'm going to implement a for loop and show you guys sort of what it does. So I think I'll recycle my isDivisible code from my if statements, and I will write maybe divisible drive, and you will very often see for loops in drivers because drivers are often about testing your code for several cases. So maybe you have isDivisible and you want to try a few inputs on it. Maybe you want to try the first number being maybe 25, then 28, and 31. So you might do for a from the vector 25, 28, 31 is divisible a by 3. And what this will do is it will essentially start the code. It will say on the first run that a is equal to 25 just after this line. It'll then run this block of code after setting a equal to 25, and that'll pass the variables to isDivisible, and it'll display something. And then once it hits this end, it'll go back. If there's another element to do, it'll do that element and then the next. And when it's done, the for loop ceases to exist. So if you run this, also I'm going to call this isDivisible 2, just so that it doesn't run the file, because MATLAB can get confused if you have code in an M file and code outside, like in another M file with the same name. So if I run this, it'll say 25 is not divisible, 28 is not divisible but divisible by 2, and 31 is not divisible. So this is a super duper simple for loop. Let's say I want to try it for a few more numbers, but consider I just want to try a bunch of even numbers. So I can use a colon expression. Maybe I could do 2 counting by 2's all the way up to 10. And then I'm going to run isDivisible, maybe with 5 as the input. To test if all these numbers are divisible by 5, which I guess is sort of useless, but this is the beginning. And it'll go through all of these elements in this colon expression, and it will test. It'll set a equal to them, and then it'll do this. So if I run it, these last 5 last 5 are from this, since there are 5 elements, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and it gives us results as we would predict. So how about some other things? Maybe we can look into seeing if a number is divisible by a bunch of other numbers. So let's see what 40 is divisible by. So for a is equal to 1 to 39 to test all numbers that are less, or 1 to 40 to test all numbers less than or equal to 40. We're going to see if 40 is divisible by a. And if we run this, it'll give us a lot of results. It'll tell us over and over that 40 is definitely divisible by 2. And I think that I don't know exactly where the 40s start, but I suppose that maybe it starts here and goes all the way to the end. But if I counted through these, I could tell which numbers matched up. Let's say I really wanted to spam the console, and I wanted to test all of the divisible numbers up to a number for all numbers from 1 to 40. So I could do something like for B is equal to 1 to 40, or 1 to A, I can test is divisible to A comma B. And that will tell me, basically it'll first go on the outside, it'll set A to 1, and then it'll start this loop by starting B with 1, and then it'll test if A is divisible by 1, so 1 by 1, and then it'll go finish this loop, and basically this loop is now the block of code that runs inside this for loop, and this is divisible to AB is the block of code that runs inside the inner for loop. This nested can actually produce a lot of stuff, and it's sort of annoying. But this is an example of a nested for loop. Finally, there is this idea of I just want to print something out a bunch of times, or do something a bunch of times. So if I want to do something a bunch of times, I could do something like for I is equal to 1 colon 1000, display cam210 is good, or cam210 is just okay. And maybe we can convince ourselves that everything is okay if we run this code. And it, surely enough, does run this line 1,000 times, as there are exactly 1,000 elements in this set of things for this for loop to look through. Finally, one word of caution with for loops, and that is whenever you're dealing with column vectors. So column vectors behave sort of funny in for loops. So if I made this a column vector by transposing it, and I think cam210 is great, I run this, you'll notice that I only think cam210 is great once, and overwhelmingly I think cam210 is just okay. This is because a for loop doesn't just look through all the elements in a matrix, it looks through all the columns in a matrix. And it turns out that whenever you do a column vector and turn a matrix from 1,000 columns in one row to one column in 1,000 rows, if you just printed I in here, it will show you that this 1 by 1,000 column of that matrix is what the element is on that for loop. I very rarely have to use this type of syntax in any constructive way, and it really just gets in my way whenever I want to iterate over stuff, and it's just currently in a column vector. So that's it for loops. In the next video, I'll be showing you while loops, which is another way to do stuff a bunch of times or do something until it's good enough. Okay, see you later.